Hello and welcome to this week's Gotham Sound live stream here on Gotham Sound TV. I'm Nick Houston, sales manager here at Gotham Sound. Today I am here with someone who is much taller than I am. Hello. He's not the Jolly Green Giant because he's not green. This is Johnpaul Golaski, sound mixer from such shows as Animal Cops, Amish Mafia, and a new feature called Zeros. Welcome, Johnpaul.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Johnpaul, being a mixer working in the field, you're a Zaxcom guy.
Yes.
Right. So I would love to know about some of the cool features that Zaxcom has before we get into what all this stuff is, like what it can do that made you say, like, I want to be Zaxcom.
Yeah, and I have a little bit of everything, but it's there's just stuff it can do that nothing else can. So I guess that's what we'll get into.
Cool. So what's the first thing that was like attracted you to it?
The first thing I switched to was camera hops. And that was going back a couple of years, but that's evolved a lot. I mean, especially I have a Nomad Rig and I have a Max Rig, but the Max with the built-in transmitter, it's a box like this big, tiny, with a two-channel.
This is the Max down here, by the way.
And this has the built-in transmitter module, so it's broadcasting full quality, 2 channels with time code, and send that out to your cameras. And especially with the RX200 receiver, it has takes internal. I used all rechargeables unless I really need to go with lithiums, but with NIMH rechargeables, this is I think like 7 or 8 hours.
Wow.
Definitely, I change it at lunch to be safe. If it's a short day, something pretty easy, then I just let it run the whole day. And it even shows you, it has the indicator lights that the older ones had on it. It shows time code on there, which I guess we're getting a little flash. But simple BNC out, TA5 for the stereo signal, and you can make it a mono leg if you only need to do a reference. But having the time code in there is huge.
Right.
Because even using other stuff, you compare it to the other options, you're still putting a sync box on.
Right.
And this is wirelessly sending my recorder's time code, which, then you're always in time with it. And for some of the easier jobs, using an ERX. And this is one of the modified ones with the BNC on it. But otherwise, with the headphone jack, this thing's made of plastic, 2 rechargeable batteries will run it 14 hours, something like that. And you have a visual reference of your time code, an LED on the top that tells you if you lose signal or if your batteries are dying, whatever, something like that. And camera ops love this.
Okay.
I mean, you compare this to putting a receiver and a sync box, especially like an old, machined out of a block of aluminum Denicky sync box, or this, camera guy's gonna give you a hug.
Right.
So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, they want 1 box, not 2 boxes.
It's 1 box that doesn't need, you're not tapping off their power. Which I know from days of doing like 2 411s. Well, because it depends on the camera. Like, if you do reality TV, a lot of stuff these days is C300s, and a lot of C300s they're using the Canon battery. Whereas, in the old days of everyone shooting on broadcast cameras, it's easy to get something where you can get a D-tap, or the camera itself might have a Hiroshi out or something. I like being self-contained. This has an external power jack on the bottom for the RX200. That's just a standard, same thing that a lot of Zaxcom stuff uses. So you could power it, and that way anytime the camera powers up. But knowing, even on those jobs, you just never know if their power is available.
Right.
And the fact that you can do more than half a day on 4 AA's is perfect.
That's pretty awesome. And and then with this, this is, a lot of people say this is kind of reference quality, but it still sounds pretty darn good.
Yeah, and it's, I don't know the best way to explain it. I mean, I guess this is considered full broadcast quality. This is like, to say it's an IFB is underselling it, because I know some directors I've worked with that hate whatever I'm using for IFBs, something analog, and they just hate the quality of it. And I'm like, all right. And then I hand them. I have some that are modified with the BNC, some that aren't, just a headphone jack and a volume knob. Give them that, and they're like, this is the greatest IFB I've ever heard. And they love it. And it's 2.4 gigahertz versus doing UHF channels. So you don't necessarily have the range that you do with something like a Comtech.
Right.
And that's why normally I just use Comtechs because it's good enough, whatever. But like it goes far, they work. But this just sounds better.
Right.
And the same thing for the cameras. Like I'm using these on the show I'm on now because I'm never that far from the camera operator. And it's when, our caster might be scattered all over the building, but I'm usually, boom's length away from the camera op. And so he has this one little box that's not throwing off the balance or anything on his thing. He's getting really good quality that he plugs into the headphone jack. And there's a reference track, a mono track on the camera, which is all they want.
Right.
Especially, again, now with a lot of reality shooting C300s, it's only 2 audio tracks. So I send him a mono mix, and then we put a little shotgun or a mini like hypercardioid or something on the camera as a reference track. And that's why some shows just don't want the 2 tracks. Even if I use this, I would still have a mono cable coming out of it. So, but that kind of changes the world of hops in a way. And then the other thing was the transmitters.
Yeah, tell me about the transmitters.
So this is the TRXLA 2.5 and difference, or TRXLA 2, but the 0.5 means it does the whole. What's it? 500
megahertz.
512 to 614. It just taps into 600.
Yeah.
But basically, like 100 megahertz. This is the lower one, and then there's one that does like the 600 range. I have the plug in the top of it, but it has a micro SD card. It's jamming on timecode, which is just saying jam. But if I go through the menus, you'll see it'll show the same timecode there. So it's recording. If this is on you, and this. Never happened in air, but we did something where I was on a show where the host was riding around on a motorcycle, and the cameras were kind of set up just to get, stuff that would be narrated over him ripping back and forth. And they had some GoPros mounted or something on the cameras. He was way out of range of everything. He bailed on the motorcycle, slid on a gravel road, went into a ditch on the side of a volcano, and it's one of those things where I was like, I have the audio. It took us 5 minutes to find him. And then our one of the field producers found him. He was pulling the motorcycle out and trying to, tipped over so the carbs had flooded. But I was like, we have the audio. We'll see. And then I think the GoPros fell off, so it never got used. But stuff like that, let alone just your RF stuff, or you're doing a driving scene and someone gets away from you. And especially if you're doing something on a car where you can't put the bag in the back. You have a built-in recorder on it. And then, like these have the NeverClip in them, so the shouting stuff is there. Same thing, the same situation where this guy the motorcycle was a dirt bike, and it was a 2-stroke, no muffler, super loud. So all in one shot, the guy is kind of talking to the camera, like, here we are, this is what we're gonna do. Kickstarts the bike, so it's super loud, he's revving it, jumps on it. We jump into the back of a car, and our camera guy's filming out the back window, and we're leading him down these roads. And the whole while we're doing this, I'm adjusting the gain. And
now you're adjusting the gain
remotely
on the transmitter.
From my Nomad. I can adjust the gain, so when he's talking, and the NeverClip gives you that safety where you're just not gonna, there might be an issue with the capsule of the lav you're using, but you're not gonna overload your transmitter.
So NeverClip is Zaxcom's proprietary kind of mic preamps where they have an increased amount of dynamic range. So it's really, you'll never clip. It's really difficult.
And if you plug a dynamic mic into one of your recorders and scream, that was the first demo I got of it. Was trying that with a Nomad AES a couple of years ago. Glenn was like, here, try this. And it was like, screaming at Javits. And I was like, okay, this is awkward, but it didn't, but it worked, But this, being able to adjust the gain, and then he's riding, and I keep touching my lavs. Wiring him up so that he could ride a motorcycle, and it's loud, there's wind, but the bike's loud, and he's yelling over it like, there, I can see blah, blah, blah in the background. From the car, I'm tweaking the gain, which is broadcast over this ZaxNet. So it's, the way that they're able to do this is that it's basically a dual channel system, that it's broadcasting the audio to the bag on the VHF system, but then it's listening on the 2.4 gigahertz ZaxNet, and it's taking commands from here, whether it's syncing the time code. I have my rig set up so when I press record, it will make that record. You can set the transmitter so as soon as you power up, it goes into record mode, which especially for reality TV, I don't want to do, because if someone wants to step off and make a phone call, you know, in case I ever need that micro SD card, there's stuff I just don't want on there.
Right.
Same thing on a film set or something. You don't want to wire an actor in their trailer and then just have, know that it's rolling or anything like that. Whereas this, when you actually hit record, you have that safety on there if you need it. But even you can change frequencies. If you're traveling somewhere and you're getting a lot of hits, you can scan either other frequencies that are good, or you can scan with another receiver, find a clean channel, then remotely do that. And I've done that especially on stuff. I did stuff where we jumped in a plane. We were in one city, jumped in a small plane, flew for like an hour, landed somewhere else. All of a sudden I'm getting interference. I'm like, okay, hold on. And instead of having to stop down the scene where they wanted this continuous, see the host and his guest, get out of the airplane, walk around, whatever, there was that second where I knew I could go in and tweak their channels and change their frequencies, and everything was fine. In addition to changing the gain, because when they're in the airplane, we're in like a little 6-seater, I don't know, something like small and loud.
Right.
They're screaming at each other, and you just kind of get adapted to that, but recorders don't. And then you get on the ground, or on an island, or on a beach, and then they're back to talking. And being able to adjust all that on the fly without, running up to someone saying, let me see your transmitter, and then like tweaking it down. And that stuff's just game changing.
Yeah.
It really is.
So the transmitter, it records.
Yes.
It's got time code built into that recording, a time code receiver, and you can remote control both the gain and the frequency and the stop and start
And the transport
recording.
controls, yeah.
Pretty awesome.
And if you really want, you can even turn off the UHF transmitter. So it's only listening to ZaxNet to get the time code. But if you were, like again, with an airplane or a car, if you were going to get on an airplane and I wasn't getting on the plane with you,
Right.
it's almost like Zaxcom makes the ZFR. That's a recorder that doesn't have a transmitter. You can turn off the transmitter. And the reason you would want to maybe do that is the battery life then goes from, I think with lithiums, it says 7 or 8 hours. I usually use rechargeables, so I get less. To you get some ridiculous battery life. Or if someone was going mountain climbing, you bury one inside their park and put it in record. And it's one of those things that, so either you do it a lot or you do it like once every 2 years.
Right.
But the fact that option's there is kind of great.
Right. Cool. So those are those cool features. How do we make this work? This bag work. Show the bag. There we go. How do we make this bag work with this? Like, how do we actually make the controls go? What do you need to do to have this Max control this?
So on the Nomad, you would actually have the ZaxNet transmitter built in, and the controls are in there. On the Max, we're doing it through. So the way I have the key, I have the time code out, which is a BNC on the side of the Max, which we could show that after, I guess. Sure. Maybe it's easier than ripping it apart. But then that goes into, this is a QRX100 with the QIFB board in it, which is now replaced by the 235.
Right.
And this little antenna is the little 2.4 gigahertz ZaxNet antenna. So I'm feeding time code into the bottom of this box, as well as IFB audio, and it's transmitting over the ERXs.
Okay. So
And
can we see the time code? Let me just put this next to it for fun and profit. Okay, so we've got the time code here, 14, 13, 47, 8, 9, 50. Okay, that seems to be, that's awesome. Okay, very good.
And then from this one, so we're going to do the gain on this. So from the Nomad, you would do it from your Nomad. There is a ZaxNet button. From the Max, we're doing it with the receivers. And, oops, did I hit it go too many times?
Can we bump in at all? Or is that as tight as we can get? We need longer lenses, Joe.
Are we going to do this with the music, or is this something else?
Oh yeah, so let's do a little demonstration
For this. Show the gain.
Yeah, so let's get the, here, bring that down. Here, I'll hold this. So we queued up some sweet tunes. So anyway.
Is that the right one?
Are you turning it up?
Oh, I'm turning this one up.
Oh. This is number 1.
Yeah. There we go.
Okay. Yeah, turn up the beat.
So, well, here, let's start at the beginning. So this is your home screen of your receiver. And then you just tap this menu button right here. It's kind of hidden. But tap it twice. And then that says TXA gain 14. And it's telling me that the gain is set to 14, which is nice to know. I mean, usually bump up and down isn't enough. But you can see.
Now it's getting louder.
And this is all being done wirelessly.
This is all happening here. Okay, now we can turn it down.
If my IF be lower.
Perfect.
And cutting it all the way down.
We can just cut it out. Perfect. So for those annoying cast members like myself, you could actually bump them down. Or if somebody's too loud, you can bring them up, bring them down, whatever you want to do.
When I do scripted stuff, it seems to happen a lot where you wire people up, you kind of know the character or something like that, you set your gain, they rehearse the scene, and then when they go into the scene, either they're way louder or way quieter, and you're sitting, you're on your sound cart and you're hopefully like a half a block away. And instead of having to go up there and, again, fiddle around with their stuff or use the remote or something like that, you can wirelessly from your sound bag, cart, whatever you're on, you can tweak that gain and adjust it. And that helps a lot. Plus you can, I don't know if you can put them to sleep with this way, can you? With the Nomad, you can kill all of them. And you send a signal over the ZaxNet, and it puts all the transmitters in a low power mode, just like so if you break for lunch, you just go to that, and then, or anyone that's in your ZaxNet range will go to sleep. And the other thing you can do is if you're going and wiring people off in their trailer, you can put everything to sleep, and then when they come to set and they're kind of in your range, depending on how you have your antennas set up, then it'll wake up their transmitters and you get that extra battery life.
Cool.
Without having to go up and, again, dig inside their wardrobe, stuff like that.
Now, how are you getting program into this IFB? Because I know that this little transmitter is doing the program and the time code for the RX200, but this is a different transmission system. So how is that getting in there?
We can, is this easy enough to pull out, or we flip it?
Oh,
I think we can flip it.
Yeah.
So with the QIFB card, that gives you the time code and the audio connectors on the bottom.
Okay,
I don't know if that's easy enough to see. Maybe we just pop this out.
And this is an actual working audio rig, so it's not really meant to come apart super easily, right? And we're back. Sorry for the brief, internet outage. Apparently, yeah, it's a beautiful day here, and the internet hates beautiful days. So there you go.
Science.
So that's science.
That's science.
That's science. So we were talking a little bit just about the connectors in the back. There's time code in, and there's IFB in.
Yeah, right on the bottom of the receiver. Like I said, my silver one is a QRX 100, which is the older model, replaced by the QRX 235. So you can also receive this. Originally, this was my camera hop receiver. So you can reverse the ZaxNet flow, and it would receive time code and output it into a camera. So I'd mount that, could do my 2-channel hop to a camera and do time code. But then once this little guy came along, the QRX 100 went into my Max bag, which is what gives me the ZaxNet ability in there. It's built into the Nomad, but not the Max.
So conceivably, you could also have this QRX, now the 235 with the IFB option, on a camera, have it giving time code to the camera, and also broadcasting time code to, like, let's say you wanted to get the bag and you didn't have an audio guy. You could have 2 transmitters recording all the time with time code lock from your 235.
Yeah, and it's one of those, you can, like I've used it for record run. You just change it where the camera becomes the master and it's feeding the time code back to the bag, whether it's a Nomad or a Max or whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Or I've there's just so many options. I mean, I've also fed timecode into this QRX100 doing a music video where you want to feed a slate and just Velcro the ERX on the back of your slate, and you stripe an MP3 with timecode, and that way, you can do if you're doing that type of synchronization on a music video, which I don't do a ton of those, but when you do it, it's, okay, I got all this gear. This is easy.
Right.
Just have to, plug the cables in the right spot. So it's incredibly flexible. It's even so, this bag, which we were showing, so this is 6-channel recorder, which I do a boom, which is just an analog, boom like everything else. It has the NeverClip on it, but still. And then I do, with this rig, 4 channels of digital audio for the wireless mics. And if I need more than that, then I go to my Nomad Rig.
Right. So tell us about the Nomad Rig. We have some pictures here. So let's get, Jared, you can pick any picture you want and just put that up on the screen. Let's show the Nomad Rig.
It's like a quiz.
Yes. So this is your portable Nomad Rig. Tell me a little bit about...
So those little grids on the top are the Zaxcom equivalent of like a BEC box to hold the receivers. And you can see it just, that way I can drop in the receivers. Rado Stefanov out in Las Vegas did this first, I guess. And I could drop in like 3 of the QRXs, or because it's the same size, you can drop in a 411 electro receiver. I put a mic plexer in there, and then I use the Audio Root, one of their distribution boxes. That's the exact right size to fit in there.
Cool.
And that way it just drops right into the Orca, that's the Orca 32 bag, and that way I can pull the whole thing right out. And one of the other pictures is my cart rig from that movie Zeros I mixed in the fall. And you can see I just took that whole thing out of the Orca, was just a shell basically, and just threw that onto, that's an 80-20 cart I built a couple of years ago, and I originally built that for my Diva with a Mix 12 on the bottom. And then I was using a Mix 8 at this point, and then at one point switched to an Oasis for this film. But the whole top thing, that one unit that's in there, that's all still the same shells that can just drop right into the bag. So, I had the Max if we were doing car stuff, something small, like, insert. But I could take that whole thing off and then just switch around the antenna distribution, whatever, pretty quickly, switch it to a bag rig, which is what seems to be the kind of the trend these days, more than having a giant cart,
Right. So tell us about this picture where you've got the Oasis, and tell us what the Oasis is. Other one, Jared.
The Diva.
That's the Diva. That's for Throwback Thursday.
This is from the movie Zeros that mixed in October, November this year, and that's an Oasis hooked up to, you can sort of see the Nomad Rig, and the little touch screen on the top left that's a tiny Winbook that I use for Nomad Touch in the bag, and it's the only Windows thing I've ever owned in my life. So it's what I had to plug into the Oasis and try. My personal recommendation, if you're using an Oasis, is a bigger screen. But like I said, I think that thing was 40 or 50 bucks.
So tell me a little bit about what you can do with the Nomad Touch and the Oasis software.
As the picture before this we showed, I used to have a Fusion and a Mix 12. So, and I had that before the Nomad. So it's something that I was kind of used to. But then switching to the Oasis, I literally switched it over on set one morning when I knew there was going to be a long day. Got in early because I could get into our location. Hooked up the Oasis and figured, okay, it'll be like a Mix 12, and then there's all the bonus that Zaxcom came up with in the couple of years after. But it gives you the physical faders, because especially doing an indie film, they're more than likely going to use your mix. And that's one of those things. When I first switched from doing a 2-track mix on set to a multi-track, I was like, well, I guess I'm done mixing. I'm mixing for IFBs, and then some of it was maybe habit because I started out in radio, doing stuff that everything was mixed down to stereo to go over the air, and find out that, especially on indie films, and it depends on, especially now with fast turnarounds, they want to use production sound mixes. So switching to the Oasis made that really easy. You have the transport controls down there with you. You have your faders, and you have the multiple banks of faders, which I didn't need. The regular Oasis is 8 channels across, but then there's, 4 banks?
Yeah.
Is that right? So you have 64 faders, but for this particular film, I never needed more than the 8. But it has, you can see your levels on that, plus even if you're not using the touch, it's still just giving you that control service. And depending on how your cart's built, you have the screen. Having the touch is giving you, instead of having your little Nomad screen, you have as big of a tablet as you want to use.
Right, and it's touch screen, right? So you can go through the menus. You can
go and you can do the metadata, which is huge. I don't think you can see it in those pictures, but I actually also plug in a USB keyboard. And so if I'm doing metadata, and the F keys are shortcuts to scene, take, note, whatever, any of that kind of stuff. So I can go in there and do that, but you can also do that from the touch screen. So if I was designing a cart from scratch, it'd probably have a big Windows tablet across the top. And even just as a visual reference, then you almost don't even need to see your Nomad, because you have your Oasis there for everything you would have done with a mixing board. And then you have your touch screen that you can actually slide around the windows and customize the layout. You can enlarge some, shrink some, and it gives you a time code reference on it. It's just, I don't know. I mean, I only got to use it on the one project, but I know from seeing like the Diva 32 demo last year, you could even, I don't know if it would work, I guess it wouldn't work with the tablet, but even with the full Diva 32, you can even bring in windows that are, instead of having little monitors, you can actually put them on your big screen. And instead of, how do I stick all these little things that I need to see on my cart, you just put one big touchscreen monitor ready to go.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's see the Throwback Thursday picture. You're going to tell us a little bit about what this is. Just for, even though it's only Tuesday, we'll bring this up again on Thursday.
So that's a Fusion 10 hooked up to, it's being fed with Electro Venue, you can see. And then that setup, sometimes when I needed extra channels, I would hook up, because the Venue has the pass-through antenna ports. I would connect that to QRXs to get extra channels. But then that's the Zaxcom Mix 12 mixer. And then that little like $10 USB keyboard worked perfectly. And you can sort of see the P-Touch stickers on it that had all the shortcuts for, you could do play record, but I would use it for the shortcuts to get to the metadata stuff. But yeah, that's basically what's evolving into now Diva 24, I guess.
Cool. So let's go to the web and read some of our comments. So let's see. First of all, a lot of love for you. So Stephen has worked with you before for the last decade, he says.
Hi, Steve.
You know your gear inside and out. He also says that everything is handheld these days, so the less weight for the camera operator, the better. So yeah, that IFB,
this makes
the ERX.
Stephen very happy. All the Stevens of the world.
Andy says you're the man, and thank you for going over this stuff. And that he also loves the ERX on the cameras. And Matt says, hey, Andy and Breslin, which I guess he's talking to Stephen and Andy. So there we go. Let's see.
And Andy was an AC on the film I did this fall, and we were shooting on the Alexa Mini and just hooked up one of these. And then just every morning we'd put in 2 batteries, turned it on as long as the light on the top is green, then you know that we had sync and we could see the levels. And everything was easy to go, especially with the Alexa Mini because it has that weird tiny limo for audio.
Yes, yeah, the 5-pin micro limo.
I actually just had you guys make up a cable that was mini jack mono and then wired it so it went into both sides of that limo. So it put the same mono signal on both channels and then the time code going into the standard 5-pin limo on the back. And that worked perfectly.
Cool.
I think, yeah, even with that camera, because people are always scared when there's a new camera, but it's relatively new. This was October. And yeah, we had no problems with it. And the editor was syncing as we went along, so I know everything worked.
Cool, all right.
So,
and also, Stephen says that you like vegan treats. Tell us about that.
Yes, I'm vegan.
Oh, good for you. That must be, is that hard or? It must be hard on a film.
Easier than it gets easier every year. I mean, I've been vegan for 15 years. Vegetarian since started college. But yeah, even on set, it's just easier every time.
What do you do when they bring pizza for second meal?
I get tomato pie.
Oh, there you go. Just
there you go.
Pick the cheese off.
Yeah, and there's so many apps. Even traveling, like I was doing a show for Travel Channel, and traveling, you know, I'm in Japan and I don't speak any Japanese, but using some apps on the phone, just find stuff.
Oh.
You know.
Cool.
Same thing, but I was telling before we started, explaining that when I lost the Pelican case, it's kind of the same thing, you know, just put out a message and look for people that can, other sound mixers that could cover us with gear until they found mine. It's kind of the same thing with everything now, you know, just everywhere you go in the world, just find people that already sort of do that crowdsourcing of information.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so anything else you want to add about Zaxcom, anything you think we missed? Paul, if there's anything you think we missed. Paul looks less grumpy today than usual.
I think, yeah, I don't know. I think it's you know, there's a lot of options out there, but it's definitely something to look at.
Yeah.
Like before I took the plunge, because before I got the Fusion, I was using a PD6, Fostex.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I remember the PD6.
And you almost could have sold me on that thing just because of the Fusion with the compact flash cards. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm using these mini DVD RAM discs that are 1.4 gigs per side, and then constantly on film sets, like, hold on, I got to reload, flipping discs, and you know, spins up
every 30 minutes.
So it's crazy how just even in the last however many years this stuff has changed. And then that was, you know, I was really on the fence which way to go and went with the Fusion, and even at the time not thinking, the thing that really made me jump into the Zaxcom wireless was I had the Hops years ago, but jumping into the TRXLA 2s when they did the extended range, the XR software, and that's, I mean, like, I guess we consider Electrosonics as kind of the gold standard of everything in terms of range, durability, all that stuff. And I own a ton of Electrosonics gear. I mean, you saw my venue. But using these I did stuff in Manhattan, I did stuff in Panama, Turkey, like in the central Turkey, in the middle of nowhere in the desert, in Utah, stuff like that. Putting one of these up against an SMQV, I was basically getting the same range. And that was what made the difference. Because before it was, you know, I think the range wasn't there, and I think maybe there's a lot of people that experimented with it and didn't see it. But with the XR, and I was just doing a receiver with 2 whips in the bag. I wasn't even doing mic plexer. I wasn't doing any kind of external antennas or anything like that. But I was working on a show where we'd do a scene where the host and someone else would do a walk and talk, but the equivalent of like 2 blocks away.
Oh my gosh.
And they would follow them, but they weren't saying anything important. So it was something that was going to get narrated over. And it was like, you guys just walk down the street like you're talking. And I could tell the exact moment looking down my bag. I had a QRX receiver, I had an SR receiver, I had 411, whatever, like a whole mix of everything in the bag. And seeing when they both came online and who I could hear, and it was pretty split, which one was coming on first. And that's when I was like, okay, this is kind of come up to the next level.
Cool.
Yeah, and I would still love to see a mixing of the two. I would love for one of these to be waterproof for reality stuff, because the combination of the internal recording, you know, there's some days where I'm like, I need the WM or I need the MM400, but then just being able to do I don't find myself using the backup recordings a ton. I do find myself adjusting the gain a lot.
Right.
And the transport controls, being able to just turn it off or putting them to sleep instead of, you know, like going up to each person, stuff like that. So there's a lot of solid options out there, you know, and it depends on the show.
Cool.
Basically.
All right. Well, very good.
But it's not scary. It's not hard to learn. I know some people are intimidated by anything that's different, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely worth checking out.
Cool. All right. Well, Johnpaul, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. And Stephen Breslin wants a shirt. Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen.
Shirts are not until the summer. Size medium, we got you. Yeah, thank you for being here. Thanks, Stephen, for watching, and everybody else. If you do want to demo any of these things, you're always more than welcome to come into our shop. We usually have these things available for rent, sale. demo whatever you want. Paul is our resident Zaxcom expert. I know a thing or three about that, but we'll sit you down with Paul or myself or anybody else here at Gotham Sound. Anyway, thank you for watching. Next week, we will have an interview with Timothea Sellers, who's currently the sound mixer on Power. And she's awesome and very entertaining, and also an incredibly talented episodic sound mixer, feature sound mixer, whatever you want. She's great. You can watch this video and more at our archive at vimeo.com/GothamSound. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, whatever you want. And if you have any ideas for things that you would like to see, please email us at info@gothamsound.com. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next Tuesday.